Welcome to the Sacred Window podcast. Here, we look closely at the intersections of the postpartum window, the Ayurvedic perspective on health and healing, and the universal mother principles that are the keys to giving and receiving effective care. Hello, I'm Christine Devlin Eck. I'll be taking you through interviews with professionals who are making a profound difference in the lives of their clients, conversations with individuals brave enough to share their stories of vulnerability as a way to lift up others, and my own journey through birth, parenting, caregiving, and building a conscious business. We are here to honor the sacred windows, the profound transitions in life that give it all meaning. Welcome to the conversation.
And I will never be the same again.
Welcome to the Sacred Window podcast. Today we are talking about the role of a fertility doula. I am really happy to welcome Jessica Palmquist as our guest today. Jessica is the founder of Turquoise Compass Wellness. She's an educator, a yoga teacher, a fertility doula, perinatal loss coordinator. She instructs and is a mentor to doulas that are emerging. She covers in her doula practice labor support, postpartum support, and of course, perinatal loss and infertility support. She's also a mom and she is a huge travel enthusiast. She is from Nova Scotia. And Jessica, I'm just really excited to talk to you about this topic. Thank you for being here.
So happy to be here.
Yeah, so let's just kind of dive into the fertility doula role based on, like, I'm just curious, and I want to start with your own experiences, your own journey, and how that has brought you to offer this support to other people.
Yeah, happy to jump in. So it kind of stemmed from my own journey and trying to grow a family and trying to do all the things out there that they say to do when you're trying to grow your family. And then it wasn't happening for us. And, things started advancing, years went by, test results were coming in, and, we were diagnosed with unexplained infertility. The foundation was there for conception, but it wasn't happening for us. So we ultimately had to go to a fertility clinic to conceive our two little boys. And it was through that journey that I realized, wow, there's really a gap here. There's not enough support. There's not enough knowledge and information for people going through this journey. Most people often feel alone, isolated. They're not sharing their story. They don't know many people going through it. And I was looking at information and thinking there has to be a better way. And there is. Fertility doulas are a great support for people going through a unique journey to parenthood. And so when I was pregnant with my first little boy in my first trimester, I found this doula program that was for fertility support. And I signed up and I did my program while pregnant and early postpartum. And then as soon as, I'm in that phase, I start supporting people right away after I had my first son. And that's kind of what stemmed me getting into this work, was going through it personally. And a lot of people who become fertility doulas often do have a unique journey, or they're linked to it because they know someone or they've supported someone through a unique journey to fertility. And then they realize there is a gap in our medical system and in our society. And so a lot of people becoming fertility doulas have had kind of a taste of that issue. And so they sign up so that they could then advocate for people through that journey.
So interesting to me because, as humans, we are really sort of programmed to operate with one another as support systems. And I think the role of a doula is so has been so impactful in our society because we've grown in sort of isolation. We create, our family sort of, we're often like separated from our relatives. We like often like keep maybe not so much women, and I hate to genderize it, but I do feel like people hesitate to reach out and get vulnerable with one another or rely on like our communities for really the deep, most meaningful, vulnerable stuff that we're going through. And it seems to me like the role of the doula has become so important because it's those subtle, really heavy, like we carry these sort of unseen wounds and unseen needs for processing things that happen, and like the whole childbearing years full of those like undercurrents of stress and worry and um, fear and vulnerability, that the role of the doula is able to really step in and hold your hand through it without needing anything else. It's like we don't, we're not imposing like that is their role, is to see us in those vulnerable spaces. But we normally would think of a doula as being there during labor and delivery. And, I didn't know that postpartum doulas were a thing until much later, but now they're more of an understood thing. But a fertility doula is something that most people probably have not heard of. So when you are in a role of supporting people, with that undercurrent of this is a time full of like a spectrum of potentially really uncomfortable feelings. There's, yeah, just talk about what it, maybe from like the perspective of going through a fertility journey yourself, what does it feel like when somebody is there for you in that way? And how does that make a difference in your experience?
Yeah. So I agree with everything you just said. So when we were going through our own journey, our families lived provinces and hours away. We had recently moved to a new city, so we didn't have this huge community of people we could reach out to. And there still is a lot of taboo when it comes to talking about reproductive health, our reproductive organs, and about fertility, specifically IVF and clinic support. So it's not like people are shouting to the rooftops what they're going through unless maybe they're in my role. And it was only when I became a doula that I started speaking out more publicly about my own journey. And when I did that, I started getting private DMs from people saying, I'm going through it too. And I had no idea. Like, they're, I would say, pretty close acquaintances of mine or friends from small circles. We would hang out from time to time, and I had no idea. And they had no idea I was going through it. So it wasn't until I started talking about it very loudly, sharing my experience, not being shameful about it, saying, 1 in 6 Canadians and almost 16% internationally are people going through a unique journey to conception, and we should be talking about it because the stats are going up as well. And having someone to support you makes all the difference. So I wish I had that when I was going through my own journey, because I'm hearing my own clients say, you're helping me go through this process with ease. I can talk to somebody who's been through something similar and know I'm not alone. I can get education from someone who's not biased. I can get the facts and the truth because you have the knowledge about the process, and they can also prepare for it depending on when they are going through that process. So some clients will come to me in the preparation phases, like, I'm going to be doing this in the coming months. What can I do to prepare? Or what can I do to help alleviate some of the symptoms I'll have on the medications, the procedures? And I really wish I had that myself going through it. And I really had to lean on my partner, who was super supportive throughout the whole process. But not everyone has a partner. Some people are single parents by choice, or, they're going through a separation and they're now going through this journey alone, and they might not have that strong support system. So if you don't have a doula and you don't have a strong partner to support you through it, it can be really isolating.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I'm curious about like, I mean, I think you actually just said some really important things, and I wonder if we could kind of look at those a little more closely of, when you are receiving fertility doula support. I mean, my, first instinct is just the like sort of ease in my heart of like, I am not by myself. I have someone who can see me and knows how sometimes hard it feels, sometimes hopeful it feels, sometimes scary it feels. Um, and I do want to just like affirm 100% like how it's mind-blowing how we hold so much inside and we don't talk about it. And I felt like that with pregnancy loss, going through that a few times myself and feeling like something is wrong with me and I am very much alone, not even realizing that so many other people around me, people I was even close to, had navigated it too. And yet it wasn't something that I found out about until later, and how much more soft and potentially less alone that process would have felt if there would have been conversations about it. So I want to say that, but I also am curious to look closer at what are the practical support pieces that a fertility doula brings to the work they do with families navigating this journey.
Sure. And it depends on where they are in their journey. So some fertility doulas will support, young adults and adolescents with reproductive health education, cycling information, and then into early adulthood. We teach people about conception, we teach people about the fertility window, and to figure out when you're fertile. And a lot of people don't realize that there's actually a really short window within a person with internal organs within that cycle that they can get pregnant. And a lot of people think, if I have intercourse, I can get pregnant at any time of the month, but that's not the case. So we teach people about their fertility window and when to optimize conception. We talk about, when they should try to conceive and why and how often and all of those things. And then fertility doulas also support people through clinic support. So if they're beyond cycle charting, they're beyond trying naturally, they're now accessing support from a fertility clinic. We could support people through that process. So it does depend a little bit on what phase, but something that we do for all individuals when they seek support is we provide evidence-based information. We provide emotional support, which I would say is the majority of what we do for people going through fertility journeys. And then we provide referrals and can make connections for support groups for them. So we kind of do that for all things that we do. And then just what it looks like adjusts depending on where they are in their journey.
It's so cool because it's really bringing a level of intentionality to the entire journey of transitioning into parenthood. And I'm always curious about, when we do that, um, when we create an intentional entry into this transition into parenthood, how does that then impact the type of parent we feel ourselves to be inside, rather than sort of feeling like we're being pulled along by the journey, or constantly surprised or at the mercy of, events that we can't control. And I think also, looking from an Ayurvedic perspective, which is such an intentional approach to health. There's such ancient guidance on how to prepare your body for pregnancy with, the types of food and the qualities that we put in our bodies during, when we eat, and even just the process of preparing our heart and our mind to open, and really align ourselves to the welcoming of this new phase of life, which is really kind of counter to sort of the very jarring, I want to say, like experience that many people in sort of our modern medical culture feel. It brings almost like a more feminine quality to the entire experience.
Yeah, it's a lot. It really is. I feel like when someone's so intentional about the fertility journey, they're entering in it with so much knowledge and empowerment so that when they become parents, they're prepared. because they were preparing before even trying in that beginning phases. And we know a lot of people who get pregnant suddenly and then they go through postpartum. They're saying things like, I wasn't prepared for this. I didn't think this is what motherhood would be like. This is not what media portrays motherhood to be like. And then maybe potentially if they're faced with some postpartum mood transition disorders because of some of the challenges they have in that transition, that preparation, preconception is so important for preparing for all phases of the journey. That's not to say that someone who prepares for that journey can't or won't necessarily face some difficulties in postpartum. We know that anyone who's gone through a fertility journey or has had a pregnancy loss is actually more at risk of having a postpartum mood transition disorder in postpartum. So as a doula, we're doing that work right from the get-go. We're preparing them, we're letting them know this is a risk for you because you're going through something that we can call traumatic, something that's a huge life transition for you. And if you're not processing that transition as you're going through it, when you have your baby, that's unprocessed. And then potentially you're going through the wave of postpartum, all of those emotions and fluctuations, and then trying to grapple, what did I just go through? And so we're trying to prepare them right from the beginning and through the process too. And so it's so good to have a doula because we can see those red flags as they come up. We don't diagnose, we can't prescribe, but we do have access to certain charts and self-assessment tools that are medically based to provide to the client. And then we get them to do them monthly in their postpartum to see if potentially they're scoring high on that self-assessment to then say you need to maybe self-refer to a clinician or a doctor to see how we can support you through that. So it does start in preconception, like that planning for parenthood. Had a recent client come see me and they recently went off hormonal birth control and they said, I'm going to be trying to conceive in the coming years and I just wanted to meet with a fertility doula to see like what is it all about. And so I get to work with that individual on looking at cycle charting and doing that own charting of figuring out, well, when do you ovulate and what does your fertility window look like? How can you tell when you're fertile? So we went through all of that, those teaching tools of how to self chart yourself or that fertility awareness method. And then we looked at lifestyle. So fertility doulas can help clients with lifestyle as well and making lifestyle changes that are supportive of a really good fertility foundation. That's not to say that if you take all your stress away, you're going to get pregnant, but we do know that stress can have a negative impact on fertility. So we do look at lifestyle as well. And through that process, that individual kind of had a few eye-opening moments going, wow, there's a few things in my life that I could adjust and help support my fertility a little bit more when I'm planning for conception. I recommended that they meet with a doctor to have their hormone blood panel done, to have an ultrasound, and to have some other investigations as well. And they received more information of adjustments that they could further make. And the doctor was able to make some recommendations on supplementation and further lifestyle changes as well. So I love it when I can support someone even a few years before they're trying, because there's adjustments that can be made rather than you're reacting to things you're finding out when you're trying. And that's kind of what happened with me was we're trying, it's not happening. And then now we're reacting because we want it to happen now. It's not happening and we're trying to figure out why. If only I knew what I knew now before I started trying, I feel like the process would have went quicker. That's not to say I might not have still needed clinic support, but I feel like it could have potentially happened a couple of years ahead of what actually happened in real time.
It's so cool, Jessica, because it's like, my background is in Ayurveda and there's what I can see here is the aligning principle of preparing the body ahead of time and approaching this transition with an understanding of how to create the best possible environment for a successful pregnancy. And, whether we look at that through an Ayurvedic perspective or a Western medical perspective, the idea is that we're looking ahead and we're creating the best possible state of balance in our own body before we get to that point. And as I was listening to you, I was really thinking back to the way that my pregnancy losses impacted my pregnancies and even my postpartum windows, because I was carrying throughout my pregnancies a tremendous amount of fear about, was this pregnancy going to be viable? There was always this nervousness about loss. And then, I don't have I can't point to concrete, thought patterns or feelings or events that happen in postpartum, but I just wonder, like, what did carrying that fear and that uncertainty in my subtle space, how might that have impacted my level of anxiety during postpartum, which was certainly a thing. And we know from, the Ayurvedic perspective that Vata dosha, air and space elements, are tremendously high post-birth. When out of balance, that can become, it can look like anxiety, it can look like unsettledness or flakiness or just flightiness, because we're naturally very high. And so the job is to create groundedness and settledness so that we can naturally balance that out. So yes, I felt all of that, and it is unknown how much of that was because of extra fear and anxiety during pregnancy. But I want to talk to you about pregnancy loss and how a fertility doula supports people through that, because this is so much more common than people realize. Pregnancy loss is a very common experience, and it is devastating. It is like, some of the heaviest moments in my life were those losses. And yet we often suffer through it alone, with very few people knowing what's going on. And as a fertility doula, we're going to encounter that. As someone who works with new families, we're going to encounter this. And it's not something that we might feel prepared to do. So I just would love to talk a little bit about that element of your work. And yeah, thank you. How are you sharing your gifts and passion for caregiving with others? In a world where education and awareness around the postpartum window is lacking or missing from our modern systems, we have a profound opportunity to shift that paradigm. You may be a few simple offerings away from making a truly impactful difference in the lives of mothers and families in your community. We are here to support your journey in the ways that work best for you. Schedule a conscious care strategy session to meet one-on-one with me, and let's identify the right next step for you to begin a path of conscious care for new families that fits your life and your needs. Visit www.sacredwindowstudies.com/strategy-session to schedule a time that works best for you. That's www.sacredwindowstudies.com/strategy-session.
Yeah. So I'm sad to hear that you went through that yourself, Christine, and you're not alone in that. It's happening all the time, but it's not spoken about in the same way. It's even less spoken about, more so than fertility. And what you went through is not uncommon. And probably what you went through was very highly likely due to your previous losses, like what you were experiencing in postpartum. Very much so. As a fertility doula, supporting people in trying to grow their families, unfortunately, along the way, I do see clients have losses. So it's really important that fertility doulas also have experience and knowledge in infant and pregnancy loss. And this is why I ended up taking on that training. Initially, I wanted to focus solely on fertility, passionate about clinic support, IVF, And then started to realize I can't not have this extra training because they kind of go together. If someone's going through a unique fertility journey and they're trying to get pregnant, there is quite a high chance they're potentially at risk for a loss as well. And I started seeing that with my clients going through IVF, with failed transfers, with, they see finally a positive pregnancy test and they go for their 6 to 8 week ultrasound and there's no heartbeat. And then they're having these early pregnancy losses or repeat pregnancy loss or late term loss and stillbirth and things like that. So it's so important that we support people through, again, these biggest transitions and phases in a person's life that's so detrimental to their mental health, their physical health, and planning for the next steps. It does create, like you said, a lot of fear in that pregnancy. So when I support someone to parenthood and they've had previous losses before, it's trying to reassure them in that pregnancy, what's happening with their baby, looking at what their baby's doing at the gestational week, and reminding them that be present with your body. And it's okay to be excited about your pregnancy, even though you don't know what the future holds, and to, revel in the moments you have with every fluttering moment with your baby. You do not have to be shunned by society to be quiet about sharing your pregnancy, even if you're in the first trimester. And this is one of the main concerns. It's kind of a societal issue in a lot of ways, where people are told you really shouldn't tell people until after you're in the second trimester. And so that you have people listening to this kind of old school sentiment, and then they go through a loss. Nobody knows. So who can they share it with? Who's their support system? No one knew. And they're going through it alone at home with their partners, if they have one. And it's terrible. They're being told, go to the hospital because the early labor and assessment won't see you till you're typically over 21 weeks of gestation. So if you're below that, you're told go to emergency, and people are in the emergency room having losses alone because no one knows what's happening with their body, or they don't have a fertility doula who could go with them, or a loss support doula who could go with them or meet with them and help them navigate that loss. We do a lot of different things to support people with loss. It really depends on what the person wants. So, in the perspective of fertility doula, we're helping people get pregnant after a loss. So we're helping people navigate that journey, which is really tough. Like going through a pregnancy after having a loss creates a lot of fear. They don't want to share their pregnancy until really late into that pregnancy because they're scared. Well, will this baby actually be born alive? Will I get to hold this baby? Is this the time that I become a mother? And they're asking all those questions. So we may support them with the emotional side of it through a pregnancy after loss. As a fertility doula, we may support someone through a loss because they're going through a cycle within a clinic setting and they have a loss. And then we're providing resources and referrals and emotional support and helping them navigate what's next, and helping them prepare them for the next cycle within a clinic setting, giving them information on what they can expect. And it's so individual whether or not they could try right away or not. It depends on so many different factors. So we're educating them on that. And then we also, if you're a birth doula and you have a background in fertility and loss, you're able to support them in postpartum in helping them remember their lost babies, creating memory boxes for the babies that they may have lost in the moment. We do that as well. Like if someone has had a loss, we help them navigate on how to make a memory box for this baby. How do you create a memorial for this baby? And it depends on gestation, it depends on provincial rules and hospital protocol and all of that. We help navigate that whole system because it's overwhelming. They're thinking about, I just lost the most important thing in the whole world, and their world has just stopped. They're not thinking about, can I take pictures? Can I hold my baby? Can I take the birth card from the hospital? And so, as a doula who has education in loss, we're able to say their rights and maybe do some of that for them with permission. They may not be comfortable to do some of that, but they want it. And we can help navigate, would you be happy if I took some pictures of your baby in the outfits you brought from the hospital? And maybe they're not ready to do that moment, but they really want that. And so we can help navigate that as well. And every doula with support and loss kind of works a little bit different. So some doulas will do that type of support and others won't. So if someone's going through a loss, they can kind of look at the bios of the doulas and ask those questions of, are you able to assist with XYZ? And then that doula can say, yes, that's something I do, or no, and then find the appropriate person to support them through something so big and so personal as loss.
Yeah, and there's no it's something you said really stuck out to me, is like this ability to be fully present, but at the same time, like when we're navigating something so overwhelming, having that person with us that can be the present one when we're just fully coping with where we are in the moment is so incredible. And then being able to, as you said, the role of the fertility doula is really like helping them become pregnant again after loss. Like that really struck me, of being um supported to be fully present in this moment. Like we can't control so much, but we can control how we approach this very moment. And that feels doable. Like I can be here in this moment and I don't have to think about the past or the future. I can just be here in this moment. And that is really kind of the crux and the heart of what doula care is helping people to be present in the moment and supported in whatever it is that's coming up right then.
Yeah. And it also, like being in the doula role, it alleviates a little bit of that burden on the support people too. They have their roles within the family scope, but then it doesn't always have to be the support people that have to hear the story again, or that, always need to be the emotional support. Maybe they can just have fun and go out on a date and go for a walk and just enjoy life, where the doula can then hear the story again and provide that emotional support and say, it's okay to be angry. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to cry. And I'll be that support person for you in that moment, and I'll do whatever you need. We'll often ask our clients, what is it that you need in this moment? Is it information, resources, connections? Is it that I just be silent and listen and sit with you? Is it that you're looking for solutions, or you're looking for support? And then we can navigate that. And it's not always the same people in their life who have to do all the things all the time, because they're going through it too. They're going through potentially the loss, or the loss of a dream. Maybe they're growing their family a lot later than they had planned. And that's a loss in and of itself, like the loss of not being able to grow their family by a certain age. And then they're already grappling with, already a wrench has been thrown in my plan. That's a loss of a dream. It's a loss of the potential of having so many kids. Maybe it was their dream to have 5 kids, and now they're 37 and they're thinking, that dream potentially is not there anymore, and they're adjusting. So there's those little mini losses that happen along the way, the monthly losses of seeing a negative pregnancy test again, and year after year and month after month seeing a negative pregnancy test again, and it's a little piece of them dies. Like it's like another loss, another dagger to the heart. And then they're watching on the media and the world around them, they're seeing pregnant bellies everywhere, because whatever journey you're going through, it's amplified. So you see it more. So I know when I was going through my journey and trying to get pregnant, it's like every person was pregnant, I felt. And then when I had my babies in my arms, finally, after years of trying, it's like I saw babies everywhere. And then when there were toddlers, I would see these adorable little toddlers crawling around. And as my boys are getting a little bit older, you resonate with the stages that you're in life, but it's heavy, because if you're going through something so heavy, It's like everything you see in society is what you want. And you just feel like, why can't I have that? And having a doula just helps you be present in trying to accomplish those goals and saying, let's keep working towards your goal. And here are some physical things we can do to help you get there. And here's the information you need. And here are the people you need to work with to really help them focus on achieving their goal without being overwhelmed by seeing it in front of them, but it's not their story to have yet, and helping them navigate that. And sometimes the story ends sadly where they end their journey to parenthood and they're going to be single parents by choice or not by choice because they couldn't have them, and now they're adjusting to a new phase. I had a client who I supported for quite a few years through trying to conceive naturally and then through the clinic phase, through IVF. It was very overwhelming for them. They felt like they couldn't keep going emotionally, so they decided to end that journey. And I just found out this week that they're foster parents to a 1-year-old little boy, and they're just so excited for this new phase. So sometimes it means that the chapter is turned anew and it's a new journey for them.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's really an honor to be able to witness people's journeys and however it's going to go for them. But simply being there is incredibly potent, and you never forget those people who walked it with you. You just never do.
Yeah. I just keep thinking of the word sacred, which goes with your own business name. It's such a sacred position to be in, such an honor to be asked to support someone through the greatest transitions that they'll ever go through. And one of the benefits for me being a full spectrum doula is that I do get to support people from conception to baby. So when I'm in a position to support someone in trying to conceive, through clinic support, through pregnancy, and then to be at the birth of that baby, it's the most incredible thing in the world to see a family's dreams come true and to have been there for every step along the way, including the losses. It's, I can't even explain the feeling of being in that position, of such a sacred position and such a wonderful role for people who feel that they want to do this. It's really overwhelming and just incredible as a birth worker to do this.
Mm, I love that, and I feel that from you. I totally feel that, and I can see that um, that continuity of support, and I felt that too in my own practice when I was able to like see the people at the very beginning and then be there to massage them postpartum and take care of them when their babies arrived. It was there's nothing quite like it.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I want to kind of close on an aspect that I think is really important for all doulas and birth support and, care providers to remember is that it shouldn't be just the doula who is the one person. That is not a sustainable expectation for we as professionals. It is not a sustainable expectation for partners to think that they need to be the one and the only one. And so, as we sort of recognize that we want the care providing profession to be a sustainable one, to be one that we can continue to do without feeling like we're holding the responsibility for someone's wellness in our two hands. How do you work with families in creating a strong support circle in their own lives, families? What does that look like for you in your work?
Sure. So, so important. And you took the words right out of my mouth, really. In one of the first sessions I do with a client is I'll ask them, do you have a support network? Do you have support people in your life who you can count on? And I do say it cannot only be me. I'm happy to be here in this role, but I can't be with them in their home every day, as lovely as that would be. but it can't be just the doula and it can't just be the partner either if they have one. So I help them navigate that. And what's interesting is I find that a lot of people, they don't actually know how to choose support people. I don't know if you found that or have noticed that with the clients you've worked with, but they're just like, oh yeah, my mother-in-law and my mom and my sister, and I have all these people and friends. And then it's like, those are family members who you love, but are they a good support for you? And we look at and we ask questions, and I help them navigate that to figure out would they be a good support network for them. So we look at things like, have they been helpful for you throughout your journey thus far? Do they ever say things to you that, are uncomfortable? Like, there's a lot of people who are just relax and you'll get pregnant, or go on vacation or have a drink, and it's those insensitive things that clients tell me their family members say. And I think sometimes people automatically feel they have to have their family members as sort of or um, absolute honored in support people because they're family, but sometimes they're not really that good at being support people because maybe they don't know how. They haven't been taught how. So we look at, are they able to keep your information confidential? Like, do they talk about it with other people? Do they say things that are helpful? And you don't have to have a huge support network. It can be two or three intimate people who you're going to allow in. I think individuals going through fertility, they might feel like they have to share every step and everything with every family member, but you don't actually. You can kind of keep some of it to yourself and just share it with your intimate support network. Sometimes it's a close best friend who doesn't even live in the city where you're located, who they've stayed in touch with. Sometimes it's a person within the clinic that they're cycling with. So when someone's going through an active cycle at a clinic, let's say they're doing IVF, for example, they have to show up at the clinic every day at the same time, really early in the morning, like before 7:30 a.m. to get their blood work done, to do an internal ultrasound, and they have to wait around for the results, and then they have to wait around to get their prescriptions for that day, and they do this for a couple weeks in the stimulation process. What they will find is there's other people in the waiting room with them who are going through the same process, and they're like their cycle buddies, and potentially they could connect with one or two people who are going through an active cycle with them, who they could connect with, and they would be a really good support network. When I was going through IVF, I kept seeing the same people every morning, and we were waiting around for our medications. We drove over to the shopping mall, or we were walking around, and I'm like, said to my husband, I'm like, look, it's them. They're from our clinic. I'm like, I'm gonna go introduce myself. And we're best of friends now to this day, and supported each other through our losses and when it didn't work. And, you know, we were able to get together. We were doing our annual trips with our kids, and, I met them from unlikely circumstances. So maybe the support network is not from where you think it's going to be from. And I would say that person was one of the greatest supports I could have ever had. And it was someone I didn't know. I literally just met them as I was going through the process. The reason they need a strong support network is they don't want to burden their partner, and they can't always be talking about fertility. Like, you can't. Relationships struggle if that's all that's discussed. So I always kind of put my teacher hat on when I work with clients as an educator, and I give them homework, and I'll say things like, you have to schedule every day a non-fertility talk time. So whether it's from 6 until 9 p.m., you're not allowed to talk about fertility unless it's absolutely imperative. And then you're going to say that safe word to say pineapple, and then the partner will know it's so important I have to talk about fertility. And it really helps to strengthen relationships. I've heard my clients say, I love that you forced us to do that. And we had our evenings back. We could walk our dog, we could have dinner. And it was like finally a moment where we didn't have to constantly be talking about fertility and clinic support and IVF, especially when someone's going through an active cycle, because it can consume you. And couples come out of fertility stronger, or they come out unable to survive, is what I've seen. It's like one or the other, unfortunately. So I always stress how important it is to connect with your partner if you have one, and you cannot always be relying on your partner to be your support person. You can have a doula, you can have your friends, you can have a family member if you feel that they will be a really good non-biased support person for you. And it's kind of teaching them how to pick a good person. I was a bit surprised by that when I was doing my work and not realizing that a lot of people don't know how to pick a strong support person.
That's so interesting. I love hearing about um, the unexpected places where we can find people who, and there's nothing quite like the support you get from someone who knows exactly what you're going through.
Yeah, I mean, there are support groups usually. Like every clinic will often have a closed like support group where people at the clinic can connect, but sometimes that's overwhelming too. I've had clients who have had to put those groups on mute, especially when they're going through a life cycle because they're seeing, oh, this person had a loss and that person had a loss, and oh, they have a similar situation to me. I wonder if that's going to happen to me. And they get in their head or look and listening to other people's stories. So sometimes they may have to mute certain virtual threads and groups that they're in because it's counterproductive to staying present and trying to be positive and trying to just focus on your own cycle. And, they're not in those groups. You can't really intimately get to know people in the same way when you're building a friendship with someone who, like you said, knows all of the specifics of the things you're going through. Maybe you connect with someone from the group, but then it's important to then kind of create and support that network outside of a group setting that can be sometimes overwhelming.
Mm. That's so good. This has been so helpful, Jessica, to just really understand on a deeper level the the intricacies of the journeys that people walk through fertility. And I think that you've brought to light like a lot of different versions of some of the things that people go through. And I mean, the fact is that each of us is going to have our own journey. We don't know what that's going to look like until we start walking through it, and nobody should be walking through it uninformed and alone. And so the work that you're providing is just incredibly powerful. And I also want to reiterate too that yes, these numbers are growing. Like from what you said at the beginning of our conversation, more and more people are navigating fertility difficulty. And so this work is going to just continue to be more and more important, and a part of the support roles that we will get to play as care providers for new families. So um, I just want to thank you for the work that you're putting out in the world. And um, I am going to make sure that listeners of this podcast have your information in these show notes so they can look up your work and your website and the areas, the places where train and support professionals coming into this field. And of course, you have a robust practice where you're working directly with women and families. Anything that you want to leave our listeners with, Jessica?
Um, I really could talk about this all day, which is probably pretty evident from our beginning discussions. And I think it's just being sensitive when you see someone who's maybe pregnant because you don't know what journey they went through, and what you say does impact them. And so a lot of people will get a lot of insensitive comments, and we don't know what people have been through, whether they're not pregnant or pregnant. So hearing the things like, when are you going to get pregnant? Or when are you going to have kids? The clock is ticking, you're getting older. Or when someone finally does get pregnant, those insensitive things too of like, oh wow, like you're in your early 40s, you think something's going to be wrong with the baby? And I've heard it all from clients. So I think it's just encouraging society for birth workers to educate people on being sensitive to people's journeys. We don't know what people have went through to either get pregnant or to stay pregnant.
Such a good reminder. Um, and yeah, I think just as all of us who are supporting people in life, but in our professions specifically, um, really bringing consciousness and awareness to how we show up as care providers and making sure that we're putting the needs of our clients as the sort of guiding light for how we show up, which of course will be different for every single person.
Yeah.
So it's really sort of an exploration of how to be the best version of ourselves as we offer services to others.
Yeah.
Amazing. Jessica, thank you again for your time here. I know that this conversation is going to bring a lot of awareness to folks who listen, and I'm glad to be connected with you and your work. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Shanti, Shanti.
The Center for Sacred Window Studies has been training postpartum care providers, professionals who work with new families, and individuals passionate about postpartum care since 2018. We regularly host live free events alongside our online and in-person training and certification programs. Hop on our newsletter list to get direct access to all of our events and community support gatherings. Our mission is not only in training conscious postpartum care providers, but in fostering a robust, informed, and thriving community of postpartum professionals. Once you step inside, you're family forever. Visit www.sacredwindowstudies.com to add your email to our newsletter list. You can support our work by subscribing to the Sacred Window podcast and sharing with someone you know who would love it. Thanks for being here and participating in the culture-wide shift that recognizes the need for and the importance of conscious postpartum care.